Okay, guys, today we're going to finish up our part two lesson of D-Day and our overall lesson on the United States from 1941 to 1944. At this point, you should have a real good understanding about the Soviet Union and their invasion. You should have a real good understanding of the Americans and their involvement and where they were involved in Europe in World War II from 1941 to 1944. Now, to finish our lesson the other day, we went ahead and introduce D-Day by giving you step one and step two of the assault. Hopefully through your newsletter and through your videos and the stuff you've been watching the last couple of days, you got a real good understanding of the paratroopers jumping behind enemy lines midnight of June 6, 1944. Now, the reason why they were doing that was they wanted to take care of the German guns back behind the lines so that at 6:30 a.m. the entire assault onto the beaches of Normandy in France could occur, and they wouldn't have the big machine guns from the countryside facing the beaches. Now, step two is what we're going to talk about today, and it's one of the most infamous moments in American military history. It is when the Allied forces stormed the beach at Normandy, and remember that per your bell ringer, Erwin Rommel was in charge of this. So Hitler's right-hand man was in charge of defending this, and also remember, don't forget that the French were in charge of France for 4 years. All right, so they had basically dug in and made a wall on the northern border of France and Belgium just to ensure that if some assault were to happen in northern France, they would be prepared for it. Now, what we did was we had a plan, and remember, it was Eisenhower's plan that we were not going to storm the beach at Calais like what the Germans thought, but it was going to come in northern France. And this diagram does a real good job of showing you that invasion. Now, you can see that there were ships that came across the English Channel from Britain, June 6, 1944, and they're going to land on the coast of northern France. Now, you can see that there's different divisions and different plans of how they're going to do this. Now, you can see, and just to give you an idea about what this diagram is showing you, you see ships out in the English Channel, all right? Those are American ships, there are British ships, and there are Canadian ships that are going to storm the beaches that day. On the coast, it's in blue, obviously. Within land, on the northern French countryside, which is yellow on the map, for those of you that didn't know, you see little black stick figures, all right? Those are German infantry divisions, okay? Where you see little green spots on the beach, those are German batteries, okay? German armor are also there in green squares. And there's also German paratroopers that are going to be involved here that day, okay? Now, look closely at the ships, and I want to tell you basically what we did was we gave code names to the different parts of the beach that we were going to take. Now, the Americans, to us, we're going to take two famous areas of the beaches, codenamed Utah and Omaha. Now, the United States 4th Infantry Division, as you see on the diagram, is going to storm the beaches at Utah. You can see the green batteries. You can see the green little specks there, and you can also see German paratroopers that are going to land right behind the beaches there, okay? So the United States 4th Infantry Division, we're in for a big time fight at that area of the beach, codename Utah. Now, probably the most famous part of D-Day to Americans is what our U.S. 1st Division did and our U.S. 29th Infantry Division did. They stormed a sector of the beach called Omaha. Now, the reason why this moment is so known in history is it's glorified in motion pictures, it's glorified in video games, and when we stormed the beach at Omaha, you can see why this is such a big deal. Omaha, that area of the beach right behind it, was an entire German division. The 352nd Infantry Division that belonged to the Germans was sitting there waiting for our troops, okay? And that's what makes Omaha, as we're going to see here in a second, such a special place. And you can see the green German batteries and the machine gun turrets and so on, all right? And that was a big deal. Now, as you're moving to your right on the map, or to the west as far as we're talking, you can see the British are going to storm the beach at a sector called Gold. Even the mighty Canadians are going to jump in, the 3rd Infantry Division are going to hit the beach, codenamed Juno, and then the British 3rd is going to take a beating at an area called Sword, and you can see how the Germans are positioned in the bottom right-hand corner of your map there, okay? And you can see the other British 6th Division there as well. Okay, so this was a big deal, all right? This was a huge deal, and the images down below show you just how big of a deal it was. Now, there's stories about how our soldiers had to storm the beaches, and I can talk about it all day, but I'm going to show you in a little bit by looking at the first 30 minutes of the film Saving Private Ryan, which is a scene that you have to see. I'm gonna get you ready for that when we get ready to see it. But you're gonna know exactly why D-Day, in the eyes of the Allies, the British, the Americans, and the Canadians, is such a big deal to this day. Okay. Now, there were 7,000 ships, for those of you that are wondering about numbers, okay? So there were 7,000 total ships that stormed the beach at Normandy that day. There's 4,100 landing craft that I'll explain, and 12,000 aircraft are going to take place in this. Now, that image up to the left is after we stormed the beaches and we cleared out the German machine guns and everything like that. You can see our guys coming to shore, and that is a very cool picture of tanks coming to shore, motorized vehicles coming to shore, armored cars coming to shore. You can see the blimps, the Zeppelins taking resources from the ships, supplies from the ships to the shore and so on, which is pretty cool to learn about. Right below that picture on the bottom left, it's one of my favorite stories of D-Day. That's a German human torpedo. Now, these little German guys, every morning for a long time, were going out into the English Channel, and their little goal in life was to sink a vessel, shoot a little torpedo from that little vessel. And it was more or less a mission where they knew that no one was going to come to save them. So their goal in life was to, if a ship did approach, an Allied ship did approach, they were out in the middle of the English Channel, they were supposed to fire their torpedo and then make it back to shore on their own. Can you imagine what one of these guys was thinking on the morning of June 6, 1944, when 7,000 ships and 4,000 landing craft are coming right at him? It must have been a sight for one of those German human torpedoes. Now, in the top right, I want to give you an example of one of those landing crafts. Now, that landing craft is the model name was the DUKW, and they were nicknamed the Ducks. Now, that was an armored vehicle that was a boat in the water, and literally, as you can see in the image there, can come to shore and is a motorized vehicle on land. All right, and they were very, very influential and helpful for the amphibious assault onto the beaches of Normandy in France. Now, if you guys have ever been on a duck tour around town, I would usually ask you for questions. I've been to the one in Seattle. Many of you have been to the one, there's one, used to be one in Orlando. There used to be one here in Fort Lauderdale. Used to be one in Miami. There's one in Boston, I believe. I've been to the one in Seattle. And the owner of the company bought up all these World War II vessels, and he refurbished them. And then you can see on the bottom, for those of you who have no idea what we're talking about, it's just a sightseeing tour. You would get on this tour, it would take you around town, and then at the end of the tour, they would find a body of water, and they would literally drive into the water. And we did that in the city of Seattle, and it was a really fun time. Now, if you have ever been on one of those, there's a really good chance that you were on a vessel that stormed the beach at Normandy during D-Day, during the Allied invasion of France in World War II, which I always like to stop and talk about. Now, on top of that, as you can see the beaches, all the hundreds of miles of beaches there in northern France, the Germans, since they were there for 4 years, also had something else waiting for us. 162,000 landmines were waiting for us as we came to shore. And we're going to see those in full effect when we get ready to watch this little clip on our film. Now, in 1 month's time, it was our goal to get soldiers to shore, and we had to get through the German lines in northern France. Now, from there, it was our job to fight across northern France and liberate Paris. Now, once we got to Paris, we could make a beeline east to the right on the map to Germany, and finish this war. Because by this time, as we'll talk about later in the week, the Soviets are going to start to counterattack and push the Germans from the east back to Germany. And now here come the Allies from the west, and they're going to sandwich Germany back into Germany in hopes of ending this war. So in only 1 month's time, as the final slide shows, you got 1 million soldiers, 1 million American soldiers that are funneling in to France, okay? 150,000 vehicles and 600,000 tons of supplies. So it's kind of like the same thing that happened in World War I when the Americans joined the war late. That war is going to come to an end. Either side needed some fresh legs, fresh minds, fresh resources, and so on. And the Americans are going to give that in World War I. And it seems like we're also, with the help of the British and the Canadians, going to give a lot of help and needed resources to the British and the French in World War II. Now it's time to see one of the most iconic clips, one of the most iconic war scenes ever in the history of film, as Steven Spielberg, led by Tom Hanks, is going to show the Allied invasion of France in the first 25 minutes of one of my favorite films of all time, Saving Private Ryan.